The wine cooler is clearly mahogany from the Regency period. But what is interesting about the books you brought along with it is that the books stopped before the Regency period. The age of satinwood was around up until about 1800, and the Regency wine cooler is from 1810, 1820. So when this was written, here we are, 1904, nobody considered the Regency period at all. So here's a major book, one of the first ever really serious dictionaries of English furniture, written by this well-known Percy McCoy in 1904. I think the last volume was 1908, not talking about Regency furniture at all. 1800, that was the cut-off date. McCoy, who wrote these volumes, he was a decorator and advisor to wealthy people. He left part of his collection to this museum in Brighton. And of course here you have an oak chair, probably Flemish, circa 1500. But we now know, because it's in the museum, that in fact it's a fake, made in probably the back streets of London about 1850, 1880, that sort of date. So the first item, one of the first pieces you come to is a fake. And this is one of the problems with this book, and also fascinating, that a lot of the pieces were actually fake. Just moving on, this one, we've got the age of mahogany, and it's strange when you think this is the mahogany period he's writing about in this volume, and here we have a piece of walnut, a walnut cabinet. But there's no question of it. This cabinet like this, these wonderful oyster veneers, which is typical of the William and Mary period, wouldn't have cabriole legs like that. Probably have an extra drawer and on a low bun feet or a low stand. Yes. So here's a major colour plate in the book, and it's clearly not right.
So the people who are named in the book wouldn't actually have known this, would they?
No, not at all. Here we have two pieces by William Kent from Houghton Hall in Norfolk. And when he was using these pieces, they were perfectly right. They weren't fakes at all. The books are really rather a descending investment, whereas the Regency piece is ascending, so at least it compensates a bit. And these were reprinted in the last decade, and of course the value has gone down a bit. A set like this, probably between £400 and £500 in a shop. The Regency piece of furniture here, which looks like it's been in the family for a long time,
yes, it has.
That's going up in value. I think that you could certainly expect an auction value of £2,000 to £3,000, and I think therefore if you wanted to insure it in a shop just cleaned up a little bit, probably even slightly more than £4,000 today.
Well, that's wonderful. Thank you.
That's wonderful. Now we know.
Yes, now we know.
Are there many of the founder's possessions known to have survived in the collection?
Very few, I think. This is probably the most important one that survived, of the founder himself, certainly. There's lots of pot lids and ointment jars, etc., but of his own possessions, I think very few.
Yes, bearing the name.
Bearing his name.
Yeah, right. Yeah. This is actually his watch, and we've got a date on it. It seems to be Chester hallmarks for 1814. Presumably that's going to be before...
Yes, Holloway was born 1800, so he'd only be 14 years old when that watch was hallmarked.
Yeah. Well, then it obviously wasn't something that he acquired new.
I think that's true. Whether this was a bad debt, given to him as a bad debt?
It actually got a signature on it, and the signature is McMaster of Dublin. Now, it's a peculiar watch, this, because it's got what is called a rack lever escapement, which means it has literally it's a lever, but it uses a rack. The balance cock of the watch has actually got the harp, which is significant of Ireland, and it's signed with the Dublin maker's name and the hallmarks of Chester. Well, that all fits together from the point of view that Liverpool was where the rack lever was invented, and Chester was the suitable hallmarking office, and obviously it was made for this Dublin maker. So presumably, maybe he was a travelling man.
He may have been. We've got no record of him going to Ireland at all.
I think your idea that he might actually have taken it as some form of bad debt could be a good one.
I think so, because he was very much a stickler for people paying their way, and he might well have accepted a watch. He might not have known how valuable it was, but a watch of that type in his 30s or 40s, he would have said, yes, that looks a nice watch and worth so much, so it could be.
Well, of course, there's something that belongs to the college. It's obviously absolutely priceless, but forgetting all the connections with the college, just for the benefit of anybody who might own the same watch, one would say that it was probably worth something around about £700 or £800.
Is it? Is that because of its age, or because
of the unusual escapement?
Okay.
And its age, and indeed the gold case.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed.